Aaliyah was an urban R&B singer from New York. She was recognized as a talent at the age of 10 when she appeared on Star Search and started appearing with Gladys Knight, with whom she had a vague family connection. She signed a recorded contract at 12 and started to work with R. Kelly, who became her mentor and eventually more, but that's quite complicated. She released her first album at the age of 15 in 1994 and released two more before dying in a plane crash at the age of 22. She also starred in a couple of films, and she's considered a foundational artist in contemporary R&B. Hi, my name's Dan, and this is a review of the album Aaliyah by the artist Aaliyah. It was her last album, and third album, I believe, and was released in the year 2001. It's my first encounter with her kind of knowingly, although I have heard of her before. Um, and so I've never listened to this album before. And the album was recorded and released not too long before her death. And in fact, it was on a trip when she'd gone to, I believe, the Caribbean to record a video for one of the tracks on the album, and it was on the return journey uh, that she died in this plane accident that she was involved in. So I'm going to first of all claim that this is contemporary R&B, but I'm going to start trying to expand that because that's a bit too narrow. So sometimes it is quite R&B like. Sometimes it's got elements of hip hopiness, and I'm not sure where you put the line between those two things anyway. Sometimes it's got kind of tinny drums, which has become a thing for modern R&B, or tinny drum samples and patterns. There's quite a lot of sample stuff in here, but there is other stuff that seems to be real instruments. Now, I am aware that the process of recording these things could be that these are samples taken from something else where it feels like real instruments, or it could be sometimes it's somebody records a snatch of real instruments and then they sample that and then reuse it over and over again, and that's it blurs the boundaries between fully sampled stuff and fully played stuff. And then the other thing that's quite iconic of modern R&B is interwoven vocals with harmonies, lots of different lines going in, and so with harmonies, but with overlaying and a very big focus on the harmonies. It's quite, in some ways, quite charty and poppy, which is the thing. That was all that it was, though. I would probably feel like I would be dismissing this out of hand. And the first track is quite typical of that sort of style, and it's possibly for me, one of the least interesting tracks on the album. But there are other things that have made this higher in my estimation than it could have been. So some tracks are more to them. Some have this impression, at least, of real instruments. There are a couple where there's bass lines where it feels like it's a real bassist, which does make a difference to me. I possibly hear that more than other people because I play bass myself. Either real instruments or well-used samples to give that feel of it. And there's at times a certain playfulness to it. So, for example, probably my favorite track on the album is "I Care for You." Uh, it's got vocal percussion, and that's not just beatboxing; it's things like and strange vocal noises that are used as part of the percussion. Um, and it's quite interesting. And I just spotted another track when I was looking, listening to clips whilst I was making these notes that had a similar thing on it. That track in particular is not as R&B as some of the others. It feels more like soul. For me, the big distinction between soul and R&B is that soul is slower. That I'm sure there's a much more to it than that. The track Extra Smooth, it uses a nice kind of sample of some chords. Is not, but it feels a bit to me like "Hit the Road Jack" by Ray Charles. It's got a similar kind of feel of descending notes to it, and I like that. Um, I liked particularly kind of the more soul-y bits generally. There's even elements of funk at times, but I wouldn't say there's a lot of that. Her singing's really nice. She's got a good voice. She's got good range and expression. It feels like there's a bit more soul to it than a lot of modern soul. So my biggest complaints, I think, my biggest complaint. I've got lots of complaints against lots of different styles because I'm like that. I'm an old grumpy person. Modern soul, I feel like often it loses the soul, so it feels very produced and as if the person singing it doesn't really have any um, feel for what the words are about, or aren't putting a lot of expression into it because it's all about making it poppy so that you can get it on the radio. This feels like there is a bit more to it than that to me. I feel like, early soul, way back Motown, back in the 60s, some of the best soul had real heart to it. And this has some of that. It's not as strong as I'd really like, but it's got more than it feels more than just superficial. Um, so we've been compared apparently to On Vogue because of the vocal harmonies. And I guess I can hear that. I did like the vocal harmonies. I often do like vocal harmonies. So she's got a good voice. Some of the tracks musically, as you get in, I found a bit musically dull, but some of them more interesting. So the first one was We Need a Resolution. In some ways, it's an interesting track lyrically, but musically, I wasn't quite so taken with it. Talking about lyrics, so the songs are generally about relationships. Sometimes it's quite focused on sex and is quite sexy, which is that good or is that bad? That's up to you, I think. I feel like it's not without substance. So there are some interesting thoughts. There's some stuff being said here. It's not stuff that's being said that I have problems with. Sometimes that's another thing that I get is I think there are messages, particularly stuff that I might think that's been listened to by teenage girls as their target audience. I think that you need to be quite careful about the messages. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily quite perfect for teenage girls, but it could be a lot worse. Okay, so at its core, modern R&B slash neo soul is not my kind of thing. In the realization of this, for me, it has more than some other stuff that I've come across that I would describe in a similar way, the core kind of music. So it had benefits to it that lifted it in my opinion, and therefore in my score as well. However, of course, at some point I've got to end, and usually at the end, I'm going to do what I'm going to do now, which is to invite you to tell me what you think of this album. I'd love to know. So please do that by leaving me a comment in the comments down here somewhere. But that's it from me for now.
Hey, my baby, why you looking so down? Seems like you need loving.